Galatians chapter 2 and verse 14. Now, this is why it's so important. Remember, at the beginning, Paul establishes that the gospel is of the highest importance. But when Peter separates himself, something happens with the gospel. Something is distorted, right? He says, "But when I saw that they were not straightforward about the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter before them all, if you, being a Jew, live in the manner of Gentiles and not as Jews, why do you compel Gentiles to live as Jews?" Again, look what is highlighted here. They were not straightforward. They were not in right standing about the truth of the gospel. Let's go to a scripture and let's deal with this because I think it's important, right? So let's talk about the truth of the gospel. So again, you have religious cults out there who teach that salvation is only for the children of Israel. And the group I used to be a part of were teaching specifically that the children of Israel are Black, Hispanic, and Native American. Anybody who would fall out of that group, right? The cult I was a part of, anybody who would fall out of that group are not the children of Israel, and salvation is not for them. Okay? So we're about to annihilate that entire worldview. Now, make sure you write this scripture down. Luke chapter 2, verses 29 to 32. And the reason, again, I'm doing this is because this is exactly what Paul is fighting against. This exclusive, it's only for us, is only for us, right? Even Jesus fought against that, right? So here's what it says. Now, this is talking about an individual by the name of Simeon, about the birth of Christ, and Jesus is brought to the temple. And God promised Simeon that you will not die until you see the salvation of what? Until you see God's salvation. So let's see what happens. In Luke chapter 2, verses 29 to 32, it states, "Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared before the face of all peoples, a light to bring revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people, Israel." Okay, now, let's break something down. Number one, who is he speaking about? He's speaking about Christ. Right? This is the salvation, right? They're holding up Jesus, doing the lawful rituals that need to be done when a male is brought into the world. He said, and which you have prepared before the face of what? All peoples. Now, the Greek word here is sarx, and it's talking about all flesh, and it's talking about human flesh specifically. So now he goes into this general term that salvation was prepared before the face of all people, everybody who has human flesh. Then he goes into describing two people groups specifically. A light to bring revelation to the Gentiles. These are non-Jewish, non-Israelites. How do I know that? Because the next portion makes that very clear. He says, and, so inclusive of, and the glory of your people, Israel. If the Gentiles are just other Israelites, there will be no need to say Israel. He would just say Israel, but rather he makes a distinction between two people groups, the Gentiles and the people of Israel. Whether they're the northern kingdom of Israel or the southern kingdom of Israel makes no difference. When you say the word Israel, you are encompassing the entire people group of Israel. Therefore, the term Gentiles here is specifically for non-Jewish believers who are not natural-born Israelites.